back, everyone. Another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147. I'm Sisto Martello, CEO of Design 2147. We specialize in building and code and zoning consulting. I'm here today with Peter Barth of Zubatkin Owner Representation. Peter, welcome aboard.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Sisto.
So my history with Zubatkin goes back a long way. Probably 30 years.
Okay.
With Marty Zubatkin.
Yep.
As I say, Class A firm.
Absolutely.
One of our greatest partners. We love to work with your firm, and you're here today to tell us a little bit about, what does an owner's rep do? I think a lot of our audience, or in general, it's difficult to really understand what an owner's rep does. And, our relationship with Zubatkin has always been from the initial stage, which is always
Absolutely.
the best.
Yeah.
Where we'll get a call and say, hey, we have a community facility. They're thinking about doing this. We're just scratching the surface. We don't have an architect. But we got some questions.
Sure.
And I think that's what Zubatkin does above the rest. So, first of all, we always want to know what our guests are, who they are, where they came from. So tell us a little bit about your journey to Zubatkin, in your previous history.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I'm a senior project manager at Zubatkin right now. I've been in the industry about 8 years or so. Graduated from the University of Buffalo with a civil engineering degree, and came down to New York. And my first gig was actually in your world, the building code and zoning and expediting world.
Nice.
I worked at a firm downtown for about 3 years, which was an incredible sort of intro to the construction
to New
industry.
York City.
I mean, it is really, I tell people, it's the most New York job you can really think about.
It really is, because it's really revolves around the dynamics and the fabric of this city.
Absolutely. And, only 8 years ago, but in that time, mostly everything's transitioned online, right?
Right.
But at that time, we were still going down to the DOB and getting in that building and, dealing with the
waiting
clerks
online and
the plan
waiting
examiners.
online 2 hours to pay for a $50.
And just the chatter in there. I mean,
Yeah.
It was real New York. And so it was also just a great sort of intro to construction and learning about the job from that angle.
And understanding how it gets pieced together.
Absolutely. Because you see from start to finish, you just don't really have everything in between, but the permitting stuff follows right along. And so at that point, I did about 3 years there, and then was looking to kind of understand the rest of, the construction industry, and got a job with Pratt Institute.
Our client.
Absolutely. And that's how we started working together. So did 2 years at Pratt in Brooklyn, beautiful campus.
Yeah. I've been, I went to school down the street at Brooklyn Tech.
Yep.
So when I got out, I went to City College instead of Pratt, and then I went into business when I was a junior in college, and quite a few of our first jobs were at Pratt.
Yeah.
And I've seen the evolution of the campus.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of great things going on. They've acquired some more. Unfortunately, I've been through 2 fires there. That was
that's
tough.
Right. That's right. The main
architecture
building,
school, and then the engineering building.
Yeah.
So they've had a couple of hurdles, but the campus itself as a whole has really grown, and it's really a fabric of the neighborhood now.
Absolutely. It's such a nice landmark in Brooklyn, frankly.
Absolutely.
And so, I did 2 years there managing capital projects, a lot of classroom renovations, office renovations, the summer slammer type of projects. Kids are out and just, it was a real...
We're doing them now.
That's right. That's right.
We're in Cannoneer Court.
Yeah, Cannoneer, my favorite. Yeah. And it was a great introduction for me because I was coming from the permitting world, understood sort of, big picture of a construction project, but just got into the details.
Now you got into the nitty-gritty.
Absolutely. And from there, I transitioned to Zubatkin. So I've been to Zubatkin about 4 years, 3.5, I guess. And have been, similar work to what I was doing at Pratt, just more variety. I mean, we Zubatkin, as you said, 29 years they've been in business, family owned. And they really focus on strategic development and project management for real estate. Yeah, real estate and construction.
Well, it was funny the few times that before you were invited on the show, you and I had many conversations, and I knew right away from our conversations that you had the expediter building code lingo.
Yeah.
And one of our
know it when you hear it.
Yeah, and one of our conversations that we often put on a couple of times a year, we come to the office and Lauren Babiak of our office puts a lunch and learn on, and we talk about changes in the code or specific topics that's going on, and it was clear that you understood. You understood the lingo and you understood the dynamics of the building department and how when someone says, well, we did it like this on the last job. Well, from yesterday to today, never mind a year ago or 2 years ago, 5 years ago, things change. And one of the places you and I spoke a little bit, and I'd like to touch upon that today, is you and I spent a lot of time talking about the fire department.
Sure.
Because there were major delays on all of our projects. And, a perfect example that I can give is, especially in your world, right, Peter? You have a community facility. They raised money. They're there for the needs of the local people. They wait a year to get it approved. They wait a year and a half to get it built. Now it's finished. They're ready to move in, but they can't get a fire alarm inspection. They need the space. The community needs the space. They're outreaching for the people.
Yeah.
And the fire department's telling us it's 6 to 8 weeks to get an inspection.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, it's
tough.
super tough, as you said, right? So most of our clients focus on that non-for-profit sort of institutional realm, right? Religious institutions, education, community-based, cultural, and you're absolutely right. I mean, funds in those, for those clients are valuable. I mean, they're
but for everyone,
and for everyone, you're absolutely right.
But for them, their goal is not to build buildings. They're not developers.
Right.
They're they're to do the outreach. So, recently, the fire department has gotten a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
They've gotten some press.
Yeah.
But they pushed back and they've actually made some progress.
Yeah.
We've seen the time. Well, a couple of things have happened. The city's not as busy as it used to be. The inspection times are better.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have started to look at implementing some simple self-certifications in certain types of buildings.
Right.
So, you and I spent a lot of time with that. What are you seeing on your end? Do you get the vibe that it is a little bit better?
Certainly, I think from an approval standpoint, for sure. We're getting objections back faster, which is really a big thing for us because you get that first set of objections back, and you kind of have a good idea of where you're sitting, right?
Right.
How close am I
how
with
bad
that
is
sign?
it, or
right.
how good is
yeah,
it?
Exactly. And even just getting that gut check helps us plan, right?
Sure, because it has to do with dollars and cents. It has to do with timing. It has to do with everything.
But as an owner's rep, right? I mean, this relationship for us is huge because, we'll get calls very early on before a project is even in the works.
Sure.
And just our clients who we've maybe managed a project start to finish for a few years or are going to in the future, they come back to us for these sort of gut checks on where things are with regulatory approvals, right? Timelines, new local laws that are coming. So it's important for us to stay up to date, be in touch with your people like yourselves, right?
Because, a lot of times, one of the things that, having a relationship with a firm for, close to 30 years is that, whether we're on the project or not, we'll get calls from your office.
That's right.
Especially from, anyone.
Right.
And say, hey, sister, we're strategically trying to tell the client that it's going to take this amount of time to get this approved. We ran it past Peter. We want your opinion.
Sure.
Are these timelines still in sync? Because the fire department used to be 6 months. It could be 4 months now. The building department used to be 6 months. It could be 2 months. It could be 12 months.
Sure.
How do you do all that? And that's even before they even have the job.
Sure.
So, having this type of partnership that we're able to call, Zubatkin's office and say, hey, we have a job. Did you guys ever do this before? Because this other contractor is telling us this. Have you run past this? And the same thing happens with us. We're not on the job, but we're a valuable source to each other. And I think that's what builds an incredible relationship. And I think that's why we've been able to maintain it, for 29 years. We do work on some complicated projects with Zubatkin. We do a lot of, subdivisions for land leases and things like that. They're very complicated, about divvying up zoning lots, tax lots, building code, zoning code.
Sure.
Hey, this not-for-profit wants to sell this piece off, but we want to keep this piece. We want to do this, or we want to. We have a developer who thinks maybe they want to knock our building down, give us a brand new building, and then build another building on the same site.
Yeah.
I mean, we've looked at crazy stuff, but that's the non-for-profit world right now because they can't afford. They're not getting money to renovate their buildings. It's way too expensive, so they're finding other ways to generate new square footage, and that's a really common.
Yeah, and well, I mean those are the kind of questions that come to us that are, I mean, they're exciting to work on things like that, right? Because I think an owner's rep at its core is a project manager. So you got a capital project going on, and we're managing every aspect: the finances, the schedule, the different vendors, sitting at the meetings, being on site,
You do it all,
start to finish, right? But then there's also this other side that people come to us just to strategize.
Sure.
And they've got a building here. They need to grow because they know enrollment for a school is going to double in the next 10 years, right? They're not ready to knock anything down and start building, but what's the cost benefit analysis?
They're looking
right,
forward.
exactly,
They're not looking back.
Exactly. And what if we did need to subdivide a lot? What process is that like? Who do we have to hire? How long is it going to take?
Right.
How much is it going to cost?
Because some of it is not just the nitty gritty.
That's right.
Right? Some of it is, being an owner's rep is, hey, we have a budget. Do you think we can buy this job for this budget? And part of your job, which I know through cost estimators, is when you're leveling all this out and you're going through GC's bids and you're saying, wait a second, how come this mechanical guy's at $2 million, but this guy's at 1.5? There's a big discrepancy there. And you start, it's not just about running the job.
Absolutely.
It's about all of it. Where the finances are coming, how much contingency should we have? How do we move all these, one of the biggest things that we do a lot of education work with Zubatkin is moving children around, keeping them safe during construction. That is a big job and a huge responsibility. And again, the contractor a lot of times says, we got it.
Right.
Well, what do they really got? They're not talking to the principal. You're talking to the headmaster. And you're trying to figure out how to get the kids to school every day while building an extension.
Yeah, I mean, we see ourselves as the conductor, right? Like, every job needs a handful of vendors. And the client's going to hire these vendors as they need to, but we see ourselves as the person for the client who is directing traffic for everyone, collaboratively working with everyone, bringing everyone together to solve issues, not just, casting blame or demanding this and pointing fingers, but sitting down at the table and saying, what are we up against? Who do we need to bring in to help us? Who do I need to call to get a second read on this? And it's both seeing the project from a bird's eye view, seeing the full pie, right? And then also getting in the nitty gritty on things.
Sure, because sometimes it's very technical.
Absolutely.
Right? And sometimes, it's also a big part of being an owner's rep always in my mind is managing the client's expectations.
Sure.
Even for us.
Sure.
Clients come to us, well, how long does it take to get this approved? And we said, well, under normal conditions, it's 6 months. And then the plan examiner leaves.
Yeah.
Plan examiner decides that he's going to go or she is going to go on, leave for 2 months, and they don't reassign the job. You can't get anybody.
Sure.
And everybody gets frustrated.
Sure.
And you can't get to anybody. And, that's a big part of our job. It's not getting the job approved, but it's just managing when these things happen, how to adjust to it, how to get it past the finish line. And I think that's really a big part of what an owner's rep does. This is delayed. We can't get this piece of equipment. We can't get this piece of the facade. We can't get this. We can't get that. And then all of a sudden, but we still need it opened.
That's right. And we want to be managing our clients' expectations and at the same time challenging the project team members to do the best of their ability and hoping that they feel empowered to do that too, right? Not just, that we're all in this together and that we all want the best for the project.
100%.
We want our vendors at the end of these jobs not to feel like I was a pain to work with, right? I mean, we're going to challenge everyone. It's not a good project is never easy, right? I mean,
if it was easy, everyone would do it.
That's right. But our value, I think, is for the entire team member, is that the entire team, all the members of the team, that we're the centerpiece to kind of tie things together and direct traffic. Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that I know that I have a great relationship with a lot of the project managers, and
Yeah.
especially Matt Doherty, who's
Sure.
one of the vice presidents.
Sure.
There. And as a VP,
He's a principal, yeah.
yeah, he's a principal now.
That's right.
Exactly. Sorry, Matt.
I just had to put
Sorry,
the plug in
Matt.
for him. Yeah.
So I go back with Matt a long way, and I could remember many nights that Matt would call me at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'd be driving home from Brooklyn, and he'd be going back to Jersey, and he's like, "Hey sis, I got this going on, what do you think?" And we would strategize, and I think that is what I love about this business, is that when you have a relationship
Sure.
with other your peers, that they can call you at any time or any moment,
Sure.
and ask you a question, and it's not even on your own job,
Right.
That's when that bond is there.
Absolutely.
And that bond goes beyond just that project. It goes to the point where, Matt is now a principal, and he still calls me and asks me for advice. And I still call Matt and say,
Sure.
Matt, this is happening. What should I do? And he's like, well, on our job, we did this. This might be a solution for you. And you know what? That gets passed, because the way that Zubatkin has done is they have that brand in their project managers,
Yes.
which makes them special. And I always have appreciated that, whether I'm working with Matt, or I'm working with Jason, or I'm working with Andy, but now I work with Peter.
Yes.
And I
Right.
feel the same way. And I think that's really a big part of having that comfort level.
They've emphasized there from the very beginning just about doing the right thing, right? And whatever that means for our client. And
every client's different.
Every client is different, but for the most part, we want to be able to give our clients the best recommendations possible as we're going through. And a lot of that times it means double, triple checking our work,
It doesn't mean that you're always going to be right either,
Absolutely.
because you're forecasting, you're envisioning.
That's right.
You're strategically thinking that if this happens, that will happen, and that will happen. But sometimes, who would ever thought that COVID was going to come and mess up all our projects for 2 years? We had crazy dynamics during COVID, and we were in the middle of projects with Zubatkin. Not easy.
And we all had to keep talking at that point, right? I mean, we all had to just keeping our ear to the streets, seeing how things were going to change. One of the things...
And adapting to it.
That's right. I mean, everyone's been dealing with, the crazy market since then. But that's been a big part of our initiative as well. It's always been for us to keep track of, escalation and inflation, and see where the trends are going.
Right.
So that if a client's coming to us and saying, I maybe need to make a real estate play, or start preparing for this big renovation in the next couple of years, where are the dollars going to land potentially, and what sort of things can I get ahead of now?
That's funny. It's funny that you brought that up. Andrew Peters from Curry and Brown. I'm good friends with Andrew, and I kind of, it's not that I ever plug him, but I love his vision and his thought process. And we were talking about escalating costs.
Yeah.
And he said, and he was on in the show earlier in the year, and he said everybody was forecasting 10 to 12%.
Sure.
And he on the show several months ago said, I really don't know, but I know it's not going to be 12%. He says, I think once the supply chain gets opened up, he says labor may go up more than the product, but he says I'm thinking like 4 to 6%. And it's funny. I ask a lot of people that also are in the industry that do estimating, whether it's through a GC's office or it's through an owner's rep, that they're looking at the numbers. Is that what you're seeing right now? Is 4 to 6%, somewhere around it, or it all depends on the project?
I mean, it's really dependent on the projects. It's
complexity, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to predict, right? And it's a hard thing to plan for. But all we can do is keep gathering all the information. We have project teams on each project in our office, but everyone gets behind a project as needed. I mean, one of the things that they've done at Zubatkin intentionally is hired people from all areas of the industry. So,
absolutely.
So we've got people who used to be cost estimators, used to be
Engineers,
construction managers,
architects,
engineers, building code, right?
Yeah.
And so
construction managers.
we have someone in our office who's constantly collecting bids and cost estimates from projects around the office to be able to take a
create
look
that data.
and see where the trends are going.
Yeah.
And that's who I go to, when I have a question about those things.
Yeah,
And
does this sound right?
likewise, if they've got a really complicated filing, strategy on a job, they're going to pull
come
me
to you,
in and
right,
let me
exactly.
sit on a call with Sisto and his team and hear how things are going and make some suggestions, and then I'll go back to the projects I'm working
Right.
on. And it's
So they utilize all of everyone's abilities, which is the sign of greatness, because
right.
not all of us can be good at everything, and I always say, the one thing that I'm known for in the industry is that people will call me and say, hey, sister, you know about this? And I always used to say to Matt, don't worry, I got a guy for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I give him a consultant that
Right.
who specialized in that. Today, I got a call like that about something with a tenant protection plan,
Yeah.
having to do with a second floor egress or something, some convoluted thing. And it's not our thing. It was more about
Sure.
site safety. I recommended someone. 10 minutes later, my guy called him. He called me back. Sisto, thanks for the recommendation. At least he guided me, put me in the right path.
That's right.
He didn't give him the job, but he got him going somewhere, gave him some direction. And I think, I think a lot of what an owner's rep does, in my mind, is the good ones always seem to keep the project moving in a
Sure.
direction. The ones that don't have it seem to find ways to make it more complicated. Instead of streamlining it, it gets even more convoluted. So, a good owner's rep keeps that, as we say, it keeps the ball moving.
That's right. I mean, we want to be testing concepts early and teasing out problems if we can, right?
Sure.
If we're brought on early enough and we can start, hypothesizing on how things are going to go, we want to start preparing for all these different scenarios. But inevitably in construction, we're going to run into problems at some point, and that's when,
No one's exempt.
no one's exempt. Everyone's
Nobody's
putting their heads
exempt.
together, and we're working collaboratively with the project team, and maybe the project team's stuck, and we need to bring in someone else, or we need to make some phone calls and
Sure.
call on those relationships that we've hopefully maintained and paid back over the years,
Of
and
course.
things like that.
And it's
right?
all about relationships.
And
is my
yes,
question.
keep the ball moving. I mean, ultimately,
And that's not easy.
it's not, but that is a huge part of running a project.
In
right?
our business,
Yeah.
like we said, we're thrown curveballs every day. This plan examiner's not around. This plan examiner took off.
Sure.
Well, you said you were going to do this before you left, but you never did it for us. Now we're trying to get to the supervisor. Now, do we allow someone else to look at the plans? Because is that going to push us back even more? So then we come to you guys. Well, these are our options. What do we do? How do we do it? What do you think? And that's one thing that, regardless, I've always felt that, having that ability to be comfortable to put it out there and be part of the team to say, this is what we're up against. This is what we see. This, what do you think? Oh, no, we think we should do this. Okay, great. We'll try that.
That's right.
And when everybody buys in,
That's right.
it's definitely, and especially because you've been on the other side of it.
Sure.
You waited at the building department where the guy says, okay, come back after lunch. And then you sit there the whole morning. You come back at 2:00 and the guy never came back.
It was one of the most frustrating parts about the job, honestly, because, just like what I love about being an OR and being in the construction industry, it's problem solving, right? And you were going to that DOB ready to check off
get it
some
done.
objections, right? And you had your code sections highlighted, you had your AI1 form signed by the architect.
You had everything ready.
You had it all there, and maybe the examiner was in a bad mood, and
they skew it a different way. And
That's right.
And the best part is, everyone would say to me in my years, so we're going to get it approved tomorrow? And I'd say, God willing, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go in and the plan examiner sticks to what we're going to review, but if he finds something else, and what really changed that? What really changed that whole dynamic is that design made a conscious decision at the time when we were able to go not to the building department, but we could do it online.
Sure.
And online created transparency.
Yeah.
Right? So we'd get on the call and with the plan examiner, and sometimes someone from COR would be there.
Sure.
Sometimes someone facilities would be there. The architect would be there. The engineer. Sometimes it'd be 6, 7 people.
Yeah.
And the plan examiner would say to the architect, well, I told you to move that door last time. And now the architect, I forgot. It wasn't like, blame the expediter, blame the owner's
Sure.
rep. I like that whole transparency,
Yeah.
that everybody was now working together. It
Yeah.
wasn't, oh, okay, I got the plans done. I kicked the can and I gave it to design.
Sure.
Design got it. We saw the plan examiner. They kicked the can. They sent it back to. Now everybody gets to see it.
Well, and it goes back to what you were saying about moving the ball, right? It's like you can't just move the ball.
No.
you want to be able to move the ball, but you need to know what you're moving. You need to know
And how to move it.
How to move it.
And are we moving it in the right direction?
That's right. And it can't be blind, and it's got to be intentional. It's got to be very intentional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest couple of topics we'll throw
Sure,
out, and
sure.
you may know something about it, you may
Sure.
not, and that's perfectly fine. This show is always about an opinion. We're not very factual, like we go to statistics and read things. So, it's always about an opinion. So, the DOB, we have one project right now, which is about 80,000 square feet, which is an office to residential conversion. You hear any buzz in the world about we hear it's a lot of fluff with no ground.
Yeah.
We're not seeing a lot of them. We've gotten one. We're bidding another one, but they seem not to really have a lot of traction. It seems that they're too expensive, and the multiple dwelling law is really hurting them from converting them.
That's right. I was just talking to someone the other day, actually, who's working on one currently in their office, another building code and zoning rep, and it is going to be pricey. I mean, the light and air situation is the crux of it, right? How do you get the residentially, the required light and
You got
air?
to build a core, and you got to cut half the skin back.
That's right, and that's a big cost. I think everyone's looking for creative solutions.
Sure.
And
Well, everybody's looking for a market to build.
and that too. So I'm imagining, this industry is always changing and evolving, and I'm imagining someone will get there, and then more and more will come.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
Until we really see, a couple make it to the finish line, right?
Yeah. So that was one really big topic that
Yeah.
we've been discussing. Obviously, the 421A is big for our firm and a lot of firms because it affects everybody in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Because, even for, a lot of the 421As that we did them as market rate buildings where there was a temple. And the temple rented a space for a few years. The developer built a brand new building with
Sure.
some beautiful apartments and gave them a whole brand new synagogue. Worked out great for both parties. They got more. They got a new structure because they couldn't afford the old one. And they got a 100-year lease in a beautiful space. And without the 421A, that probably would have never happened. So right now, Hochul's trying to extend the 421A for the deadline to complete, but the new one passed because of the budget, and nothing got done. And now we're looking into the next year. So our pipeline, and a lot of people that have been on the show, the pipeline's different. Now we're, everybody's looking into the community facilities and into the state work, into the CUNY work and the SUNY work.
Sure.
And, even the private school work is not where it used to be because their enrollment is down. A lot of people left the city, so that the dynamics of the market, we have a lot of work that was left over, but getting the work for the next few years, is a challenge right now.
Yeah. And I mean, that type of planning is what everyone needs to be doing, right? I mean, they can't just look at what work's going to be finishing up this year, right? I mean,
we're trying to look 2 or 3 years out. That's the beauty of working with an owner's rep, is that if you guys have stuff that's projected for years, we may be looking at it now, but it may not start for, I have some projects, we probably did about, I think, and I don't want to misquote myself on the episodes, but I think we did around, 20 421As for the last deadline. We only have 6 of them that started.
Wow.
14 of them are just because they can't. The financing's too expensive. It's not that the cost went up. The cost of money went up.
Right.
The cost went up 4 or 5%. They had that in their contingency, even if it's 10%. They have that. And actually, they can get the product faster now than they were anticipating. The problem is that the money got expensive, and no one's willing to. The loan to value ratio is getting harder and harder to get. They want the developers to have more skin in the game. It's just not that easy, especially for the mid-sized projects. The big projects, different story. A couple of hundred apartments.
Right.
I'm talking about the ones that are 60 to 90, which is
Right.
the 6-story
Sure.
typical
Sure.
quality housing, inclusionary type buildings.
Are you all seeing a lot coming through in relation to Local Law 97 in terms of big energy, retrofits?
Well, today was a really good conversation with Ken Willie from KOW. They're owners reps, but they're different kind of owners reps. They do more on the banking side, but they do a lot in sustainability. And we were talking about Local Law 97. There's 50,000 buildings that he quoted that need to comply by 2030.
Right.
And right now, it's really only about carbon. So there's a lot of talk about it. The biggest talk is, what do they need to do? Going to the calculator, understanding how to get their building down to what they need to get it. And then, how much of it do we have to do by 2024? How much do we have to have done by 2025? And then the big one is, how much has to get done by 2030?
Because that's when the fines really go up.
Because that's when the fines really go up. And he quoted some, like the first year, by 2020, at the end of 2024, 2025, it's like they're estimating they'll collect that based on how many buildings and how many of them won't comply, they'll collect around $200 million.
Yeah.
But they're saying by 2030, the number goes to $900 million in fines.
One of the things, we have a project in Manhattan for an independent school, and this is one long-standing client. We did a large project with them years ago, but they've been kind of envisioning for the future, and we've helped them with a master plan, and associated with that is the facilities conditions assessment and sustainability report, and that sort of planning. Is something we help with quite a bit. Where when it comes to Local Law 97, what are our fines going to be for one, right?
Right.
But
where are you going to find the money to do what you need to do? Who's doing that assessment?
And so,
it costs money to get an architect, an engineer, and a firm like yours, and a firm like ours to say, I need a new roof. I need, I need new roof. I need new windows. I need this. I need that. Plus, I got, an old gas-fired boiler. I got this. I got that. How am I going to get all this carbon out? And then that's just the carbon part. That's not the energy part.
Right. Well, and so it's, if for a client to have the wherewithal to start planning is wonderful, right? And bring on these vendors and figure out what the numbers and the plans are. But then you're really looking at a benefit analysis of, if I'm going to be fined $20,000-$30,000 a year starting in 24 and then 50, 60, and 30. But in order to get that to zero, I've got to do a $4 million infrastructure project. At what point does it make sense?
That's what I spoke to Ken about, is that, is New York State going to be able to assist some of these schools, and just in general, I don't mean schools, but I mean, with some tax credits,
right.
that they can use that money to put it in the building instead of giving it to the city.
Right.
And again, I think the city did it, the state did it, not the city, but the state did it with the city so that there was some skin in the game. Because if there was no skin in the game and it was a small fine, everybody would say, well, forget it, I just won't deal with it.
That's right.
But I think they have to deal with it. I mean, I think it's a big part of
go forward. I think people are feeling a little overwhelmed by it. I mean, you have to, they're tough decisions to make, and you have to, what I think is most beneficial is to bring someone in to start studying it for you now.
And I think that's what, we're starting to get a lot of calls about the applicability, not really the grunt work yet.
Sure.
But that's going to happen.
How is it going to apply to me?
I mean, just to wrap it up, Peter, first of all, thank you for coming.
Of course.
This was
always
awesome.
Good to talk to you.
And I hope it met your expectations, that I told you that when we start talking, it goes pretty quick. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, we're wrapping it up. But that's always a great conversation. But I always, one of the benefits of having a podcast is that we get to talk about the future.
Yeah.
We get to make certain predictions, and then we get you to come back and look back and see what we thought was going to happen and if it happened or not. So, not to put you on the spot, but I think that one of the big questions is going to be Local Law 97.
Yeah.
I think that for a firm like yours, a lot of time is going to be spent on this topic for us and for you. where do you think it all ends up? Do you think a lot of the buildings meet the deadline, or you think they're going to miss it?
I think the city's gonna. I can't imagine we're done hearing from the city on it. Frankly, I think there's got to be more information that comes out.
There'll be some concessions.
Yeah, and we'll have to.
They're going to feel the market, and then
I think there's still a lot up in the air, frankly, and there's a lot of noise about it, right? I mean, there was an article a couple months ago about One Vanderbilt, right? The massive new building that hit a lot of energy goals, and it's still going to be paying some fines, right? So I think there's more to be heard about it.
Good.
Yeah,
that's a great prediction.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty conservative position, but I like it.
Gotta be
thank
careful.
you for coming on the show.
All right.
It's been great. Say hello to all my friends
Absolutely.
at Zubatkin, and thank you for taking the time. I think it was great.
Great to talk
Appreciate
to you, Sisto.
it.
All right.